Welcome back to the Lipoedema podcast. We are your hosts, Shell
and Tiana, and today we are joined by a very special warrior and also a board member at Lipoedema Australia. It's Sharon Frantz. Sharon, thank you for joining us.
It's my absolute pleasure.
Yay! I'm so excited to get straight into our questions because you have and live with lipedema. So we're going to touch on that first, but then there's some really exciting stuff that we want to talk to you about as well. How did you come to learn of lipedema, and when was that?
So during COVID, I was in regional Victoria, so not as bad as Melbourne, but close. During one Sunday morning, I was not getting out of bed in a hurry and grabbed my phone and looked at the ABC News website because that was just my little habit that I read my news on the ABC. And there was a story about someone who couldn't lose weight and had this condition. And I'm like, oh, just another, clickbait to sell diet pills or something like that. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, it's the ABC, so it won't be that. So I had a look at the article, and it was Carla, who used to be on the Lipoedema Australia board, and she was talking about having lipedema. And I just looked at those photos, and then I Googled it, and I looked at those people's legs, and I just burst into tears, and I went, oh my God, they're my legs. And had an explanation for my legs that just kept growing, that were at sometimes felt like my skin was ripping. It was so painful and, freezing cold some days. And I couldn't work out what was going on with my legs. I just thought, oh, well, maybe I'm just lazy and eating too much and not exercising enough. And, there's that beautiful self-stigmatization that we do to ourselves. And, just did a lot more Googling, looked at the Lipoedema Australia website and went, oh my God, this is me. And then started that beautiful process of acceptance and grief and everything else that goes with working out what is going on with your body.
Yeah, it's such a big process.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in. And sometimes we're not ready. Did you have this lag period between learning about lipedema, recognizing that that's you, and then starting a process, or were you right on top of it?
I was smashed into it because I had been to my GP multiple times to say, I need a dietitian. I need help. This is not working. I'm doing this. And, trying to work out, because mine started at, I would say, puberty, maybe even pre-puberty, but around, that time, I was always different from my siblings. Yeah, perimenopause was just an explosion for me. It was just out of control, and just pregnancy obviously didn't help. And when perimenopause hit, I was like, this is really, what's going on? I wasn't eating like I would be putting on that much weight, and I was on my feet. I was doing 10,000 steps by lunchtime because I was in a kitchen, and people would say to me, oh, you just need to go for a walk once you finish work. I do more steps before you get out of bed most days. Give me a break. It's not that I'm not moving or lifting, 15 kilo boxes of chocolate and 10 kilo bags of sugar and 15 kilo blocks of butter. I'm lifting all those daily. I'm working out on a daily basis. It's not as if I'm not moving my body. And yet, I had one chiropractor tell me that I was just eating too much cake and I needed to close my business. And,
So insensitive.
Yeah. So when I found out what it was, no, I was smack into it, mate. I was in all the emotions, and I went full into the reading about it. I won't say research because as a researcher, I'm very fond of that term, but I was reading everything I could. I got formally diagnosed, and then I turned my attention to my daughter, who you'll know and love, Mickey.
Yeah.
And looked at her and went, babe, I reckon you might have it too. And sure as heck, she's in the same boat as me. Yeah. So I didn't have a lull.
Yeah. And, looking at Michaela's experience, do you recognize your previous body in Michaela, or was your presentation very different later due to pregnancy and perimenopause and stuff?
Look, her body's completely different to mine, and she was born with these legs and a bum. She was born with a figure eight. I couldn't believe it. Honestly, this kid was born, and I looked into her eyes because it was a very quick labour, and I looked into her eyes and said, where did you come from? Hang on a minute, 2 hours ago I wasn't even in labour, and here you are. And she was screaming. She was full on. And I looked at it, and then I turned around and I said, whoa. And she had this bum and legs and tiny little waist. So she had this figure when she was a newborn, and I'm like, that's strange. Like, that's not strange, but that's different. Like, I've never noticed that in a baby before, like to have this, and so hypermobile. Like, she is just so hyperflex. I hope she doesn't mind saying this, but I'm sure she won't. But and so I noticed her body from her being born, and she used to always say to me when she was little, I'm busting to the loo, Mum, I can't undo my tie on my pajamas. I said, just pull your pants, like, just pull them down. And she's like, I can't. Like, her bum and her legs as a little kid, like as a child, where she still had that figure. So, people say you can't be born with it, but I actually dispute that. Yeah, so her body was completely different to mine. I'm very much like my grandma, and my grandma would have had no doubt, and she would not have known.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so you said that you mentioned about pregnancy, but did you find progression during pregnancy and then during perimenopause?
Pregnancy, a little bit. I did lose the weight, my pregnancy weight, but perimenopause was just like my legs were growing, my arms were growing. And then of course the menopause belly happened, and it was all very different. Very different. So, yeah, and as I said, it wasn't because I wasn't moving my body, and it wasn't because I was eating unwell, like I wasn't eating bad or anything like that. But, and, if I ever did drop on the scales, not that I don't use scales anymore, but if I ever did drop on the scales, it was hard to maintain. It was a tough journey.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's the toughest thing I've found. Like, I always had a tiny waist and big legs, but now I've got a tummy, and I'm like, I've never had a tummy. That was the one thing I was like, oh, but I've got a nice flat tummy, and now I don't. So thank you, perimenopause.
Yeah.
Changed my whole shape.
I always had a belly, even as a kid. Like, my sisters were sticks, like tiny, like tall and skinny, and here's me, the chubby one, But I would always say to them, my boobs were bigger. I would always annoy them. Well, I've got nice boobs, so bad luck.
Yeah. I can't have it all, and look at my boobs.
Yeah, a bit skinny, but I got the boobs, so whatever.
I actually identify with that body change as well, but mine's because of postpartum and also because I've had surgery on my legs. So I've gone from having, big legs, big hips, big bum, tiny waist to now, because I'm postpartum, I have a tummy, and then I have like a bum, but I have no legs. So, my wardrobe doesn't fit me because the size is different, but also it doesn't suit me because my shape is so incredibly different than it was pre-surgery and pre-Nova. So I don't recognize what I look like anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to dress for my body shape anymore because it's so incredible. It's almost like an apple.
Or like gone from
a reverse triangle, really, because I'm broad. And then it goes in like this, but not at the waist. It goes in at the hips.
And that's the thing, right? We change. And the thing is, I think with surgery as well, I think the notion of how your body changes doesn't really hit you until it does change. And you can try and mentally prepare for it. But I mean, I haven't had surgery, but I know with the changes in my body, it's a tough thing, but we're still talking about it. We're still being told it shouldn't matter, but it does. And it's a battle. It's a mental battle. I find it such a mental battle. I see these posts or these quotes that say, in 10 years' time, you'll look back at yourself now and think, why was I worried? Or, I'm at the best I'll be. And I try and think about that now in this body and think about this is the best I'll be and try. I don't believe in toxic positivity. I don't believe in forcing myself to love my body, but I believe in trying not to hate my body. Not
appreciate it.
Body neutrality.
Neutrality, exactly. And not even acceptance as such, but just being neutral about it. So that means for me, not hating it.
Yeah.
I like that. I mean, that's a realistic approach, isn't it? Because I feel like toxic positivity is rampant, and we can't be hating ourselves. Like, it just perpetuates and snowballs from our brain into our physical. But neutrality, like, our body is a function. Just worry about the function.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not there yet, but if we keep doing the work to try and be there.
Oh, we'll never get there though, because there's not an end point. It's like we're just trying to be better than we were yesterday.
Yeah.
you know, try and
It's not a
help our thoughts. It's
destination.
not a destination. It's just always a process.
That's true. It's
Or
a
maybe
journey.
it's just that it doesn't occupy our mind as much. You know,
Yes, I like
maybe
that.
there, but it's not necessarily buried, or you're not deluding yourself. A favourite word. You're not deluding yourself, but it's just not taking up as much space in your brain, and it's not taking up as much space when you look in the mirror or when you're getting ready to go out or something like that. It's such a tricky thing.
Yeah, it can take a back seat. Doesn't have to be at the forefront all the time.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
That'd be good.
Yeah, let's do that.
Good aim.
And go.
Right now.
So, Sharon, how do you manage your lipedema? What things do you do to support yourself through it?
Wear compression, not the tightest of tight compressions, but as tight as I can bear. I've also recently been diagnosed with this thing called dysautonomia, which is a dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system, which is something that controls your blood pressure, your heart rate, your temperature, your pupil, digestion, bladder, all the things that your body does by itself that you don't have to think about. Mine have all got their wires crossed. So one of the treatments for that, or one of the ways of dealing with that, is wearing compression. So I figure if I've got these chronic illnesses and I have to wear compression for both of them, that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I wear my compression as much as I can. I have the comfy waves for night. I like my little Sigbara silhouette tights. They work really well for me and they fit my body well. And I've tried lots of different pairs, but for me, that's what I like. Drink lots of water, walk where I can. Again, with the dysautonomia, it does interrupt a few things. I've got a pump for my legs as well. And and then the way of eating stuff is really triggering for me. So
Yeah.
I do my best to eat protein at every meal and fill up with veg and salad where I can. And I try as best as I can to limit my empty carbs.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
It's a simple approach.
It's got to be simple.
And those are the main things, right?
Yeah.
Like the protein part is so prominent. And then like just avoiding some of the carbs that you know are probably going to sit there for a while.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be rigid. It doesn't have to, I think we've spoken before, nutrition isn't sexy. It's very basic. And if we can hit those basic things, we're going to see some change. We're going to see less pain and we're going to see less inflammation.
Yeah.
We're just going to feel better in our bodies. And there is such a connection between what we eat and how we feel, our mental health. And I think that's a big one. I know recently I'm going through some shit and I'm eating so much chocolate and I feel terrible.
Yeah.
But I know it's only a blip. I know, it's not something I'm always going to be doing. But for now, it's okay.
That's your coping.
But I do understand that it's not serving me well. It's not making me feel crash hot.
The thing is, right, you've got to do what you've got to do. There's so many people with lipedema that have been gaslit, that have had issues with healthcare experiences in terms of, medical misogyny and, disordered eating comes hand in hand with a lot of this stuff. So I think for me, when I have gone keto before, it didn't work for me. My hair was falling out and then, of course, if I go strict and hard, I rebound. And I can't afford to do that anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. I'll never go on another diet. However, for me, what I try and do is fill up on more of the good stuff, make sure that I've got my protein so I'm not feeling hungry. It's just trying to do what works best for yourself. It's not, and I'm never gonna criticize anybody for having chocolate or a bowl of ice cream or whatever. Your life's too short. You've got to have the fun stuff too, and it's just how you manage yourself.
Yeah. And I think that remembering that we are more than our lipedema, our condition, lipedema, speaks to responds well to anti-inflammatory diets, but we're not just a condition.
Yeah.
And so we have so many other factors that would respond to eating more balanced and having treats and stuff that aren't anti-inflammatory. So, if you're dealing with lots of information taking over your life, maybe the anti-inflammatory diet might fall a little bit higher above on your priorities list. But if you're not, the rest of your life needs to be a consideration as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And look, everybody's going to do everything differently. Like, there's no one way that's right for everyone. And it's finding what works for you and finding what you can maintain. And I think the important thing is the maintenance and like how you can show up each day doing what you need to do for your body. And, you'll have days and weeks and months where, I won't go near the pump and I just think I can't mentally get near that. And then there's times where I'm like, right, let's do it. And while that might not be solid or ideal or textbook, it's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not robots.
No. And like we said, like some of those things, they take a cognitive load. Like because you got to like putting on your swimmers and going for a swim, getting out your pump, making sure it's charged. Like they all take a cognitive load. And when you're, just getting by,
Depleted.
it's the last thing. Your spoons are gone, Shaz. There's no spoons for this stuff.
Yep.
So yeah.
I understand that completely. I mean, I've got a pool downstairs where I live and got to love Lipoedema for being able to float, right? So
Tiana's not a floater.
Oh, you're not a floater, my lord. Okay. I can actually sit cross-legged and crossed arms like I'm in the Dead Sea in the pool. Like I just sit.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I reckon I'd levitate on the Dead Sea.
Yeah. My friends have told me if we ever go on a cruise and it sinks, they're coming there straight to me like I'm the lifeboat. They're just going to grab off on the life raft.
So, Shaz, I want to flip our switch right now and go into, so you're quite the academic, which I love, and I want to talk a little bit about your PhD and what led you to decide to do that.
PhD was always in my wheelhouse somewhere along the line, right? I did a master's 20 odd years ago by research. I'm a researcher. I love research. I strayed and went into small business for 10, 12 years, 14 years for when the kids were little, and we lived regionally and that worked beautifully. But coming back to live in the city, I wanted to go back to my true love, which was research. And I always knew that when I had a PhD, it had to be within me. It couldn't be something that I was just interested in, or this is a good idea, maybe you should do this, or somebody else's idea. I knew it had to be something that I was passionate about. And I must say that all the talk about medical misogyny at the moment is making me happy that it's being highlighted. It doesn't make me happy that it exists, but that I think has been one of the driving forces for me, talking about that experience where, chiropractor told me to stop eating cake because, you're obviously too fat. And just having a shopping list of those experiences in my life, I just thought, hang on a minute, this has to get better. We have to do better. And what can I do? Like being a researcher, having that ability to write and run a research project, having the ability to a bit of a chit chat. What can I do? And when I had my business, I'd have a lot of time where I was driving or, doing deliveries and doing things like that where I could think. And it was always like, what can I do to better the position for women? Like that was always been my driving force. And when you're in business, you think about the whys a lot. You think about your purpose a lot. And I came to the conclusion that my purpose was to do something that could be left behind that would help women progress. And it was only natural that when I found out that I had this condition, thought about things like fat phobia, bias, stigma, thought about the experiences that I'd had in healthcare, thought about my experience with diagnosis and the grief that I went through and that whole process, and thought, okay, this seems like something that I need to be looking into. And that's how I came about doing what I'm doing now.
And what am I trying to say here? So with a PhD, you have to have come up with your question. So how did you come up with what your question was going to be? Or is that still a process that you're working on?
Oh, the research question's a lovely thing. It is a process, and you have ideas. Look, honestly, I did pre-work before I enrolled in my PhD. I was fishing around the literature for about a year before I enrolled. And I started off thinking, okay, I want to look at healthcare experiences. So I was reading all the literature around that. And then I went into, okay, what can I do that's a positive thing? That positive outcome can I have? And then I started looking at some data that we collected with Lipoedema Australia and thought, oh, hang on a minute, there's stuff in here. So I've sort of morphed into this topic, a research question around diagnosis and looking at the psychological impact of a lipedema diagnosis. So that takes into consideration things like the grief and the process of what happens when you're diagnosed. It looks at what's happening before you're diagnosed, and it's such a rich area. So I could give you a research question. So basically looking at the psychological impact of a lipedema diagnosis. It's very broad. I do have a couple of more focused questions. I'm writing an article at the moment, hopefully to be published by the end of the year, about looking at the predictors. So the factors that actually statistically impact or affect how long it takes to get diagnosed with lipedema. So that's really interesting. That'll be coming out hopefully this year. And it's not a fun story, but it's an interesting one. So I think that whole gamut of looking around your diagnosis is such a massive area to pick lots of different questions. My PhD is by publication, so I need to have 3 publications in top tier journals, plus a thesis, which is, I think, 40 to 100,000 words, plus I have to meet all my milestones, plus I'm doing what we call a graduate certificate in research, innovation and management. So I do 4 subjects for that. So that's what my PhD looks like. So yeah, that was a bit of a convoluted answer for your question about my research questions. So
No, that was perfect.
kind of hard to pin down at research. Research questions are quite dynamic. So right now I'm looking at the predictors of a delay to diagnosis, and I also want to be looking at the process that people go through once they're diagnosed. I've also got data on what it's like trying to get a diagnosis.
So are you collecting the data yourself, or you're finding data that's already been collected?
We did a big survey with Lipoedema Australia about your experience with lipedema, that we collated responses to give to the members of parliament, so we could say, rightio, this many people have done this, this and this. So I've been given permission by Lipoedema Australia to actually use that data set in my first part of my PhD, and then I will collect additional data on top of that as well, looking at specific areas of the process of diagnosis. So yeah, both.
Oh, that is so exciting, Shaz.
Yeah, it's a real commitment, isn't it?
Massive commitment. 3.5 years. I'm about coming up to my first year anniversary. I'm very excited. I'm on track, which is a wonderful thing. I absolutely love it. I'm a big nerd when it comes to looking at the data. So for me, when I can trawl through that, I mean, I was doing statistical analysis yesterday as well. So that to me is my joy. So as weird as that sounds, it's really something I'm quite passionate about. So it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, because it serves your purpose.
Absolutely.
You said that's what was your purpose. So this is exactly on the path. So it would be lighting you up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's exactly
something positive out of a challenging diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I can leave something behind that is beneficial, so if there's an outcome that people can use and look at and say, okay, well, we found this to be the case and we found that this helps. So if there's anything in there that we can find that, builds resilience or is a way of, I suppose, enforcing or promoting the positive. And again, not toxic positivity, but something that it's tangible that we can work with that improves the lives of women with lipedema, then I'm happy. I've done my job.
You're a year into almost a 3 and a bit year journey.
Yep. It's exciting. It's a hard job. It's something you really have to keep at, and it's a daily practice, and but it's so worthwhile. And I think if that's what your brain is set out, like if that's what you're built to do as such, then I'm lucky that I found a project and a topic that I can feel like I can personally benefit from, my daughter can benefit from, and then other women can benefit from. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
We are very lucky to have you doing this for us. Like, it's for the whole community. Like, yes, it's directly impacting you and Michaela and your granddaughters down the track, but also to all of us. Like, all of this commitment you are putting in is going to benefit the 11 to 12% of women in Australia and the world.
Well,
like, it's not just Australia. Is trying to get diagnosis and the whole process of that affects everybody who hears that word for the first time.
Yeah, and findings, get ready for this. It's supported previous research, which is not necessarily, I mean, it's a great thing, but it's a sad story. But in this sample, we found that the delay to diagnosis was 26.9 years. People on average are waiting almost 27 years to get a diagnosis of lipedema. Things like endo and PCOS are looking around about 6.6 years. And there is a theory, if you're going into the feminist theories and medical misogyny, that's a reproductive issue. Therefore, men have more interest in getting that solved quicker, whereas people with lipedema are waiting on average, in this sample, almost 27 years to get a formal diagnosis. Yeah.
That's 27 years of being told, stop eating cake, walk more,
Yeah.
You're lying about
It
your
actually
age.
makes
You're
me
lying.
feel very blessed,
Mm.
to have my diagnosis so early.
For sure.
Considering it sort of came up around puberty. It doesn't feel early, but really, in the scheme of things, it is.
Yeah. Well, one person in the study waited over 60 years. Yeah. So it's a little bit heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's a little bit heartbreaking, and it's a little bit, it gets a fire in my belly because, we're talking about a fat disorder. We're not, so we're talking about something that can be easily attributed to something else. It's easily misdiagnosed as something else. It can be easily blamed on lifestyle choices. However, we need to make an effort to look beyond that. And that all comes with education, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we had a warrior who was diagnosed when she was 16, but the doctor said there's nothing you can do anyway. So it was 15, 20 years down the track before she decided to look into it again and then found that, there was some information out there and some education had been done in the medical profession.
And you know what? We have to take it on ourselves, right? Because we don't have the support to get compression. We don't have the support to get MLD. We have to pay for that ourselves. Surgery is out of the reach for so many people because of the cost. Like I'm 56 and, I'm considering it. I'm on a waiting list. I have to think about the impact that has on my retirement. And, like if I'm taking money out of my superannuation, I think it would be better for me if I went down that path to get a personal loan or a credit card, because taking money out of my super, and particularly for young women, that has such an impact. Like it's exponential. Like that worries me. It really does worry me. So the financial hit we face, like I've got data on how much people spend, and it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And to, one, be misdiagnosed, two, to have your diagnosis missed. So, like completely not regarded, completely shoved out the door, nothing wrong. And then to be told there's nothing we can do, because when you think about the medical system, it's built to save people's lives, and it does that, right? On a lot of occasions, it does that. And we're not. Some people are in life-threatening situations with lipedema as part of their condition, but generally speaking, lipedema is not life-threatening for me right now.
Yeah, we're functioning.
Yeah.
We're walking well.
Yeah.
Walking well.
Walking up, wounded, whatever. Therefore, we're not unwell. So I can see why there's nothing they can do. I read this great book about body and the health system, and how the health system is there to basically medicate and save our lives. And when it comes to lipedema, that doesn't fit into that. So we do have to take this treatment on our own and pay for it and look after ourselves. And that's really tough. And I think the more information we get out of there, like even just things like lymphatic drainage, self-lymphatic drainage and dry brushing and things like that we can do, make it a habit in my shower that I do my lymphatic drainage. And all those things, doctors aren't trained to tell us that, because it's not saving our lives. It's not doing what they're trained to do. And that's why it's so important for this message to get out about what we can do to help ourselves. And the cognitive load, which is the tough bit, right? And, we're lucky that we have got discount chains where you can buy dry brushes and things like that. So we can find some tools to help us. I mean, hands do the job, dry brushing does the job, it's available, but it's the knowledge that needs to be out there. and promote it. And you guys are doing a great job at that. I think that's the part of educating medical professionals about, particularly GPs. Okay, it's not just a diagnosis, nothing I can do. It's a diagnosis. Okay, these are the things that have been shown to help. These are the people that can help you with these things. And, maybe it might be a good idea for you to get some psychological support as well, because the mental impact, the psychological impact is massive. And I've got this gorgeous GP down the road, and I'm so lucky I found her. And I said to her, I've got lipedema, and she goes, oh, I haven't heard about that. And then she got on a computer and she went, that sounds dreadful. She said, have you had some psych support around that? She said, that really sounds like it's hard to carry. And I just burst into tears because it was the first person that saw me and went, oh my God, there are people out there that care. So yeah, it's important. The self-care is really important. Yeah. We just got to remind ourselves too, don't we? And that bargaining and that sort of being a little bit angry and stamping our feet, that's all part of the grief process too. And that's, that's normal and that's natural. And I think grief is one of the massive things around diagnosis. And I think it's one of the things that we're left to our own devices on. I was so mad. I was so mad at all the doctors and, healthcare professionals that had missed this and had told me something completely wrong. The incorrect medical advice, that's so prevalent. And, I had to really work through that anger and that really work through it and understand that it's a failing of the system. It's not a failing of the person. Incurable's another word. Incurables are pain's another word that, I write regularly and I feel every day. And, and I think that hidden pain, we're a hidden disease, but we're so visible. Yeah. But as a set of symptoms, it's hidden because people just will look at you and make that snap decision that you're fat, obese, whatever it is they want to label you as. But it's so much more. And it's pain, it's heaviness, it's, I was looking after daughter's cat and he walked across my arm and I was like, oh, that hurts. Like, how can a cat walking across your arm hurt so much, And that all that hidden stuff, the fatigue, that's right. It's that's where we need to educate people. Yeah. And this sort of stuff, PhDs, stuff that we're doing on the Lipoedema Australia board, all that sort of stuff works together and elevates it. And, lots of drops in the ocean will get the message out there. I feel like there's a change. I feel like it's starting to really, there's a tipping point that we've crossed and it's starting to build. I have that hope. I really do have that hope. That happens.
We'd like to thank Sharon Frantz for coming on to our podcast. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, so we couldn't ask her our last question. But we're going to wrap up this episode. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Bye. The Lipoedema Podcast 2025 is powered by Elegance Lymphatic Care. Lipoedema and its symptoms vary from individual to individual. The opinions and advice voiced in this podcast are of a personal nature and used for educational purposes.
Please take away from this podcast what resonates with you, and please see your GP or preferred specialist for diagnosis and healthcare. We are Shell and Tiana from the Lipoedema Podcast. Until our next episode, bye for now.